Well, good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. We are live tonight. We're doing this at night. So we are live tonight on Podbean. We've done a couple of 3 shows on Podbean. You want to check it out for sure. Um, it's a way to catch up, and then there's a lot of our old shows on Podbean. You want to check that out. And the reason is that why I don't take them down is simple. I want to make sure that everybody, and the same thing with YouTube. This is not evergreen content, but I want to make sure that everyone knows that we've been saying the same thing all along. That we don't change with the wind, we don't change with people's opinion, because a lot of shows change with people's opinions. When opinion starts to shift, and they start to shift too. I never found that there was any benefit to that. Because then you're just sort of chasing the trend. When I could just double or triple down or quadruple down on what we have found here at Fightback Media be the truth. My name is Willie Lawson. This is the Morning Report on fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com, and Fightback Media TV and Podbean. I'm pointing over here, over there, because my Podbean thing is over there. So I mean, if somebody shows up and if they show up in the chat room, I'll have to address them by typing on the keyboard that way while looking directly into the camera. Have you guys noticed my new glasses? You can kind of see my eyes because they are glare resistant. Before we get started, if you've if you've gotten new glasses, I've never had glare resistant glasses or any of that kind of stuff. Keeping these things clean without smudges on them, it's just impossible. I won't do that again. Uh, I just won't. It's not worth the hassle. Uh, just give me some polycarbonate lenses with no coating on them, and I can just lick them, wipe them on my shirt. Good to go. All right, let's get started. um, it is the Florida primary tonight. Let's go ahead and get you what's going on across the country. The primaries around the country are this evening or today. And let's see here. With 99% of the ballots here in the state of Florida, and the presidential preference primary. Now, there were only Republicans in the presidential preference primary because in Florida, no one was running against President Biden. So let's look. Let's start from the bottom up. With 0.1% of the vote, Asia Hutchinson. With 0.1% of the vote, Ryan Binkley, whoever that is. With 0.3% of the vote, Vivek Ramaswamy. With 0.8% of the vote, Chris Christie. With 3.7% of the vote, make sure I got the right one. Yeah. Ron DeSantis with 13.9% of the vote, Nikki Haley. Now, these numbers for Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, Chris Christie, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ryan Binkley, and Asia Hutchinson could very easily be absentee ballots. Very easily be absentee ballots that were sent out weeks ago and were sent out definitely before Nikki Haley pulled out of the race. So anyway, that's probably what that is. And with 81.2% of the vote and winning all 125 delegates, Donald Trump. 910,857 Republican votes. And how do I know that? Because in Florida we have closed primaries. So unless people are willing to go through the trouble of switching parties and voting against him, these are all Republican votes. Even if they did, they were registered Republicans. So I guess that's what that is. Now, Democrat, not in Florida, the event got canceled because there was no one running against President Biden. So we will catch some of the other elections as the show progresses. I want to talk about this though. The Supreme Court of the United States just gave Texas a green light, basically, to arrest illegals and much more. Now, let's go ahead and get into it. The White House is not happy. They sent out a response through Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre that reads like this: "We fundamentally disagree with the Supreme Court's order allowing Texas's harmful and unconstitutional law to go into effect. Isn't it interesting that the Supreme Court, that rightly or wrongly gets to decide if something is constitutional or not, the White House has decided that this is not constitutional?" Well, okay, well, what court are you going to go to? What court are you going to go to? They believe that people have a right to a constitutional right to abortion. Okay, but they don't believe that the states have a constitutional right to protect themselves against illegal aliens. Wow. Uh, uh, they say that Texas's harmful and unconstitutional law will go into effect. SB 4 will not only make communities in Texas less safe. This is the kind of gaslighting BS that we have to just wade through. So, arresting illegal aliens, keeping them out of your communities, and that any law enforcement officer in the state of Texas can arrest someone and a judge can send them back to where they came from. This will somehow make your community less safe. Um, yeah, yeah, they need to stop smoking pot. They need to stop smoking cocaine there. Um, and will also burden law enforcement. And so chaos and confusion at our southern border, because right now it's calm and peaceful because people are just walking through like it ain't nothing. Now, the chaos will be as people are hauling ass back across the border because they're figuring out if they try to cross in Texas, they can be arrested and deported by the law enforcement officers in Texas. Yes. And that keeps criminals out because, yeah, you can get busted by anybody. You don't have to, I mean, you don't have to look for, while you're looking for Border Patrol and you see Texas Rangers show up or some sheriff's office or some, I don't know, some city cop dude, they could arrest you and send you back to where you came from. Yeah, I'm not sure how that makes your town less safe. Now, if you're listening on the Podbean cast, go ahead and write in the comments, or if you're in the chat room, tell me how arresting illegal aliens makes your town, your community less safe. I'd love to hear from you. Write down in the comments if you're watching on YouTube how that makes your community less safe. It will and also burden law enforcement. It forces law enforcement to do their job. Now, that doesn't mean that law enforcement is going to be around busting people looking for illegal necessarily. They might, but it's not a burden to them. Keeping people out of the country who aren't supposed to be here is not a burden. It's a responsibility. That's different. Um, it's just and it's just another example of Republican officials politicizing the border while blocking real solutions. Well, no, there's no politicizing the border. They're just trying to obey the law as it's written now. That's the real solution. There isn't any. See, this they try to gaslight you and BS you into thinking that there's some other solution for this problem. The only real solution to this problem is to obey the damn law. And if someone comes into the country illegally, send them back. that's the solution. There aren't any other solutions. There are no other solutions. There are answers, and there's a difference between an answer and a solution, and I'll prove it. 4 plus 4. I answer 5. Well, that's not right. No, it's right. It's an answer. It's not a solution. The solution in 4 plus 4 is 8. An answer, a wrong answer. That's why you can have right answers and wrong answers. Anything can be an answer. Letting people into the country and giving them an asylum date for 10 years from now is not a solution. It's a wrong answer. And we need to start guarding against wrong answers, especially when we have a solution. No, if you're going to seek asylum, you need to stay where you are and apply for asylum. And then if your case looks tenable, then it'll be granted to you and you may come in. That's the real solution. The White House says that we remain focused on delivering significant policy changes and resources we need to secure the border. So arresting people who are here illegally is not securing the border. This is why immigration, illegal immigration, should be the number one issue in this election. You know why? Because there is a solution. And frankly, it's not that complicated. This is pretty much cut and dry, pretty much black and white. Can you come into the country illegally? No. And if you're seeking asylum, you need to seek asylum from your home country before being allowed entrance. Done. Done. Absolutely done. Solved. Which doesn't mean that you won't be taking people in. Doesn't mean that at all. You won't be. It doesn't mean that you won't be allowing people to immigrate here. If indeed they go through the process, you have an immigration process. Most every one of us knows somebody who's from somewhere else, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, South America, who's moved here and become a citizen. Almost everybody knows somebody like that. And we all know that it's a process. And it's a needfully arduous process. Even people who have come from countries that don't necessarily like America or Americans or American government, they are now US citizens. So obviously it's not impossible. So what we see at the southern border is completely unnecessary. And so you don't have to be incredibly cynical. You don't have to be yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Yeah, look up that reference. You'll like it. To think that there's something amiss here, when their solution is simply to allow everybody and their mother and unaccompanied minor children to walk across the border, and to give them asylum dates for 10 years in the future. Like somehow that's the plan, right? They say that so I don't know what significant policy changes and money they need. That's why we continue to call on congressional Republicans to pass the bipartisan border security agreement, the toughest and fairest set of border reforms in decades. Well, no, the idea is that there are already laws. Let's do that first. We can't implement something else when we can just implement what we're not even implementing what we already have. And there's no region for fairness. What fairness? Don't break the law. That's the fairest thing. Yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 on yesterday. Sorry, this afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, that Texas law enforcement officials have the legal authority to arrest, detain, and deport illegal immigrants. Man, they don't like that. The ruling, which is in excuse me, the ruling which is an injunction allows Texas to enforce SB 4, a local passed in the a local law passed in the Lone Star State until the case receives a ruling from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, what other border states could start doing is doing the very same thing all across the southern border, starting at Florida, um, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, um, Arizona. You know what I'm saying? New Mexico, all those states across the southern border, California. California won't. We know that. They can start doing the very same thing. Now, they may have to stop depending on what happens with the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, but they can start doing that too. They can implement that rule right now. And I guess Biden would, the Biden administration would sue them all. But okay, let's do it. The tweet from Attorney General Ken Paxton of Texas reads as follows: Huge win. Texas has defeated the Biden administration and the ACLU's emergency motions at the Supreme Court. Our immigration law, SB 4, is now in effect. As always, it's my honor to defend Texas and its sovereignty and to lead us to victory in court. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick told Fox News that the ruling is historic. Border Patrol Union President Brandon Judd said that this was huge for border security. Now imagine if you work for the Border Patrol and what you know is that you have just deputized every freaking law enforcement officer in the state to help you with your task. So you went from being understaffed to being almost overstaffed in an instant. So the real heroes who are out there really doing border patrol, really trying to keep the country safe, are thrilled. Freaking thrilled. Now, the three liberal Supreme Court justices led by Sotomayor claim the ruling will cause more chaos at the border. Here's what they said. Today, the court invites further chaos and crisis in immigration enforcement. Texas passed a law that directly regulates the entry and the removal of non-citizens. They won't say illegal aliens. They just won't say it. And explicitly instructs its state courts to disregard any ongoing federal immigration proceedings. No, just send them back. That law upends the federal-state balance of power and has existed for over a century. Yeah, why? Because the federal government is not doing their job on purpose, not because they don't have resources. They've just decided not to do their jobs because they are up to something else, and you don't have to wonder much to wonder why. That law, again, upends the federal-state balance of power and has existed for over a century, in which the national government has had an exclusive authority over entry and removal of non-citizens, but they're not doing it. They're not doing it. They're just allowing everyone to come in. Well, no, the federal government's not even following their own law. When that happens, the states have to do what they have to do. Good for Texas. I hope a bunch of other states along the southern border follow suit. Now, when cities like San Francisco and Chicago and New York and other places around the country, when those police departments hear about such a thing, they should get on board. They should get on board. What do you think? Write it down in the comments. And if you're on Podbean, write it in the comments. And if you're in the chat room, write it in the chat room. All right, let's go ahead and talk about this for a second. It is election night in America. Let's see. In Ohio, they've got a U.S. Senate Republican primary with Bernie Moreno, who's the incumbent, against Matt Dolan and Frank LaRose. Um, Looks like Moreno is going to win that election with 88% of precincts reported in, and he has 50.5% of the vote. Let's go on to the next one. The Ohio U.S. House District 6 Republican special primary. Uh, Looks like the winner will be Michael Ruley with 49.1% of the vote. Now, Reggie Stolfus has 40.6% of the vote, and Rick Sy coming up last year with 10.3% of the vote. On the Democrat side, Michael Krepchak had 65% of the vote to Ryan Fisner's 35% of the vote. Ohio, U.S. House District 1 Republican primary, Orlando Souza, Sonza, Sonza, ran unopposed and will be headed up against the incumbent, Greg Landsman, the Democrat. I hate when people run unopposed. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. California U.S. House District 20 special primary. Um, this is how they do it too. They throw everybody in a pool and everybody runs. District 20 special primary, Vince Fong, the Republican, is in first place with 40.7% of the vote. And then Michael Boudreau has 26% of the vote. So I guess it's going to be a runoff between Vince Fong and Mike Boudreau. Democrat Marissa Wood, 23% of the vote, and I believe that gets her out. Of course, there's only 70% of the vote reporting at this point. It is midnight here on the East Coast, and they've been closed probably for, let's see, it's 3 hours now. Here we go. Illinois. Their polls closed at 8 my time. That's 4 hours ago. Let's look with 83% of the vote in the Illinois U.S. House District 1 Republican primary. Marcus Lewis wins 81.1% of the vote to Montel Gaji, 19.9% of the vote. The Democrats ran unopposed for District 1 in the Illinois U.S. House, Jonathan Jackson, and it's an uncontested race. I'm trying to look for, but whatever. All right, now the Arizona presidential primary in Arizona. Donald Trump wins handily 76.3% to Nikki Haley's 20.2%. Ron DeSantis brings in 1.7% of the vote. In the Arizona presidential Democrat primary, it is Joe Biden, then Marianne Williamson, Dean Phillips, Gabriel Cornejo, and Frankie Lozada. 89.8% of the vote for President Biden. In Illinois, the Illinois presidential Republican primary, Donald Trump wins 80.7% of the vote to Nikki Haley's 14.3% of the vote. Let's continue. Illinois presidential primary, Democrat, Joe Biden, 93.3% of the vote to Marianne Williamson's 3.6%. Kansas, they are closed. They closed 3 hours ago. Donald Trump wins the Republican primary, 75.5% of the vote to Nikki Haley's 15.9%. Ron DeSantis, Ryan Binkley both lose to none of these candidates, 5.2% of the vote. So obviously there is a pretty large contingent of people who are not happy with any of the Republican candidates. All right. Let's see, Joe Biden, 83.8% of the vote, followed by none of these candidates, 10.2% of the vote. Marianne Williamson loses to none of these candidates. Dean Phillips loses to none of these candidates, and so does Jason Palmer. All righty. As a matter of fact, in Rawlins, Sheridan, and Ness County, none of these candidates were the winner. Let's look at where at Ness County. None of these candidates wins 47.9% of the vote to Joe Biden's 42% of the vote. Sheridan County, 64.3% of the votes for none of these candidates to Joe Biden's 28%. Rawlins County, none of these candidates, 61.1% of the vote to Joe Biden next to 33%. So there were counties where none of the votes actually won. None of the candidates actually won. That's pretty amazing. Absolutely pretty amazing. All right. In Ohio, the presidential Republican primary, Donald Trump 79.0% to Nikki Haley's 14.4%. Dean Phillips, the only challenger in Ohio, loses to Biden 87% to 13%. Florida, my home state, where this broadcast is being broadcast from, on YouTube. Where else? You're going to see this on YouTube. You're going to hear this on Spotify and everywhere else you get a podcast, and here live on Podbean. All right, Donald Trump wins Florida, 81% of the vote to Nikki Haley's 13.8% of the vote. If you wondered, Ron DeSantis came in third with 3.7% of the vote, well ahead of Chris Christie, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Ryan Binkley and Asa Hutchinson. And I think you are caught up. Of course, well, and because there were no challengers to Joe Biden here in Florida, Democrats did not have to go to the polls today. So there you go. So that's what's going on in the election world. All righty, let's continue. Now, we all heard the bloodbath narrative, right? So it got said that what Donald Trump said was that if he wasn't elected, there'd be a bloodbath, right? Oh my God, he's threatening a bloodbath, right? He's threatening more violence. He's invoking more violence. He wants another January 6th, blah, 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 blah. So we heard that over the weekend, former and potentially future President Donald Trump held a rally in Dayton, Ohio, in support of Senate candidate Bernie Moreno, who won this primary, by the way. I just reported that. During his remarks, Trump warned about a bloodbath if he's not elected in November, with the full context of his words making it clear he was discussing the auto industry. Now, again, what do I always tell you? Context, nuance, fact, right? Not important. Not important if you can get a good story out of it. Not important if you can get people riled up. Not important if you could just flat out lie to them, blatantly lie to them. So that didn't stop the liberal mainstream media from taking their cues from the Biden campaign out of context, deceptive clips. It was certainly a hot topic for all the Sunday shows. I mean, they just pumped that crap up this weekend. So this whole bloodbath thing. CBS Face the Nation, Deface the Nation, as it's called, spoke to former Vice President Mike Pence, who briefly ran for president against Trump this time. It was obvious that wasn't going to work. Pence made clear to the host Margaret Brennan, "I cannot, in good conscience, endorse Donald Trump," which was what many took away from the segment. But he also addressed that framing the bloodbath. He addressed the framing of the bloodbath remark. As one of Brennan's first questions for Pence as she played these remarks, she said, "What does that mean?" Adding, "And given how divided the country is, does that language concern you, particularly when it comes to political violence?" This is what Pence said. "I woke up this morning seeing online all the discussion about bloodbath. And as you have reflected, the president was clearly talking about the impact of imports devastating the American automotive industry." Although Pence had just said before that, that part of his response that he uh, commended Brennan, she went on to claim that Trump's remarks were a little muddled. Pence still maintained, and I think it was when asked if the president's statements were intentions were clear. Yeah. The segment then moved away from those remarks, speaking of making things clear. Pence shared, I want people to know, look, the president and I, it was very clear for 4 years, the president and I have different styles. He also reminded we're different men, and that differences with him are not over style, it's not over language, it's not personal. And when it comes to why Pence wanted, and it comes to why Pence won't endorse Trump. Although the Face the Nation X account shared a clip, it curiously decided not to focus on Pence's clear acknowledgement of what Trump actually meant. Of course not, because it doesn't fit the narrative. We know that. So during Meet the Depressed, host Kristen Walker claimed that the president's comments were ominous. She went on to note the Trump campaign tried to clarify, saying he was talking about the auto industry. Well, you don't have to say that. All you have to do is look at the entire thing, right? Biden's campaign seized on the comment saying Trump is doubling down on his threats of political violence. You know, the Biden campaign not only seized it, it did so with the help from his allies in the media. Welker also, yeah, my my co-host is upset. Welker also brought up that Pence has failed to endorse Trump just before she welcomed her guest. Yeah, Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana. Do you think those comments were appropriate? Welker began by asking. Cassidy making clear that from the start that he's not a Trump fan. The general tone of the speech is why Americans continue to wonder, should President Trump be president? That kind of rhetoric is always on the edge and maybe doesn't cross, maybe does, depending on your perspective. Cassidy's criticism is hardly surprising when he's been openly critical of Trump before and was one of the Republican senators who voted to convict him in his second impeachment trial. So obviously, Cassidy's a moron trying to convict someone and impeach them when they're no longer in office. However, Cassidy did have a telling point about the rhetoric he expressed concern over. I also think, though, that the mainstream media contributes to it. If you take one about the bloodbath, which arguably could be about the economic bloodbath, not the kind of street violence related to the election, and then give it to the defenders something to focus on, something, which was the story that he asked. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. You know, State of the Union on CNN, all the same, all the same. They all showed up and said, "Oh my gosh!" Like the when he said there were some very fine people there when we're talking about the thing in one of the Carolinas where some idiot drove a car and killed a whole, and ran over a whole bunch of people. There were some very fine people there on both sides because it was there about a statue. So it wasn't just um, white supremacists there. There were some people who really thought that tearing down statues, erasing history was a bad idea. And you don't have to be a redneck card carrying Klan member to think that that's a bad idea. And there are people who were saying that, we should maybe look at these statues and look at these memorials and measure them in context to what we're going through today. And they weren't crazy either. I think they were just wrong, but they're not crazy either. So yes, there were some fine people there. Not everybody down there was terrible, but you can't say that because media will jump on whatever you say and they will twist it and then they will amplify the twisting. Right? That's what we're dealing with. All right, last story. This is someone I've never heard of. Olivia Rodrigo, I guess her name is. Uh, so she partnered with a local pro-abortion organization to set up booths at her concerts and pass out emergency contraceptive pills and resources to help young girls obtain an abortion. So you go to the concert, you can get some rubbers, you can get some Plan Bs, you can get set up for an abortion. So following backlash, the singer's team appears to have reversed this decision. According to Variety, abortion organizations that were hosted on singer Olivia Rodrigo's tour will no longer be permitted to distribute morning after pills, condoms, and other resources at her shows. Here's the lines that were in Variety. According to three sources at local abortion funds, that decision came from Rodrigo's team and was relayed over Slack by the National Network of Abortion Funds, which partnered with the pop star to set up booths at each of her North American tour stops. Jade Hurley, the communications manager for the DC Abortion Fund, says the NNAF said Rodrigo's teams preferred they no longer pass out lubrication, condoms, and Plan B because children are present at the concerts. The reality that youth have sex and youth need is access to birth control and emergency contraception, Hurley says, Variety over the phone. What we're doing is completely legal in all 50 states. So you send your kids to this concert, some teeny boppers concert, and as they're walking in or walking out, there's somebody passing out rubbers. There's somebody passing out lube. Lube. It's like they walked into an adult bookstore. Right? Right? Am I right? Am I right? Destiny Spaeth, chair of the Prairie Abortion Fund, told the outlet Variety. There is something really positive about a 16 or 15-year-old having a Plan B and a few condoms in her dresser to use as she needs it. What's positive about a 15-year-old having enough sex that she needs some rubbers and she needs Plan B? What's positive about that? Reportedly, the pro-abortion push at Rodrigo's concerts was short-lived. Local abortion funds began distributing sexual health resources at the show on March 8th. Last week, photos of the Plan B pills that were handed out in St. Louis show went viral on Twitter, right? So you go and there's a little packet you could get. It's got some rubbers in it. It's got 2 Plan B tablets, and it says 1 tablet, 1 step, right? I understand that Rodrigo rose to stardom through the Disney Channel. Yes, because Disney is corrupt and evil to the core. The White House enlisted Rodrigo to help push COVID-19 vaccine. Why? Because when they say they're not after your children, they lie. They absolutely lie. All right, we got to get out of here and make room for somebody else. So until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye bye now.